Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Watch Out. I am your host, Drew Pizzulo. Please ignore the thunderstorm in the background from time to time, but I figured I'd do it out here in the gazebo. And I want to talk about today's topic, which is going to be watch buyouts. This is a very interesting topic because in the industry, there's a variety of conglomerations. There's a variety of mergers. Everything that's going on. This isn't new. This has been happening for decades, on end in the industry as times change, as um, evolution changes things, and as technology changes things. So when we look at the buyout aspect of it all, we look at either good or bad. And I'm basically going to give you 5 examples of good and bad buyouts from watch companies that have happened over the years. Because sometimes they could be a positive thing, and sometimes they can just kill the brand altogether. Let's start with the negative. Let's start with the bad of 5 brands that didn't make it after the buyouts occurred. First is a brand that everybody pretty much knew, which is Elgin. Elgin was an American brand, over 100 years old, and as it says here, once the dominant force in American watchmaking, Elgin was dismantled and sold off in the late 60s. Now, what really killed Elgin was it was sold off several different times. The first in the late 60s, but then got sold several more times. And it was because of the quartz crisis of the late 1970s that companies like Elgin really didn't have a chance of making it. And the more it got sold off to a Chinese company, it got sold off to a Hong Kong company. And the more it got sold off, the more it got diluted, and the brand just lost all meaning with whoever's fans it still had at that point. I mean, you later saw it being advertised in places. I'm sure you've gone to Walmart or Target, places like that, that you saw Elgin watches. They aren't the Elgin watches that you remember from the 30s, the 40s, the World Wars. These are cheap reproductions that have a name that are basically cheap junk, and unfortunately the brand and the name, which was originally Lord Elgin, but the brand and the name just faded into history after the buyouts just basically killed the brand. So that's a perfect example of one that just got bought out so many times and ended up into the world of oblivion. Another one, number 2 on the list over here, that is just more recently, was Zodiac. Okay, Zodiac, again, another 100-year-old historic brand, known for a lot of different things, and unfortunately, it suffered twice. First, under the quartz crisis that I just talked about with Elgin in the late 70s, and because it suffered there, it was sold off once, and it was brought into a conglomerate. And then later on, which really killed it, was the acquisition and the merger of Fossil. Now, Fossil, as we know, is a fashion brand, and it's an Asian fashion brand that didn't help this brand. It wanted to purchase Zodiac to get its foothold into the Swiss luxury market. And while the concept may have been pretty good, the execution was pretty bad because they didn't really leave the group alone. See, the thing is, when you merge, a lot of times when companies merge, they take over operations, they take over the headquarters, and that was the case in Fossil's case, where Fossil got inundated with cheaper parts, and the quality just drastically changed and suffered due to Fossil's acquisition of it. And unfortunately, Fossil as a company did not make it. So when they filed for bankruptcy, the Zodiac brand basically went along with it because Fossil still currently owns it. Now they may get spun off in the future, they may get bought out again and live to see another day. But if that doesn't happen, then Fossil will go by the wayside as well. Okay, another brand. This is one that pretty much everybody knows. They were absorbed in the 1980s by LVMH conglomerate, and unfortunately for Tag Heuer, this merger happened twofold. First, the original brand was just Heuer, and Heuer was known for their stopwatches, and they were known in the 60s and 70s as one of the, like, especially for track and field, everybody had a Heuer stopwatch. And then Tag came in and bought them out, and it became Tag Heuer. Now, when Tag came in and bought them out, their quality started to go downhill to the point where they are consistently rated year after year as the Swiss luxury brand with the most defects and the most complaints for the parts breaking and the most set of repairs. So whatever Tag tried to do, they did modernize their style. They did come out with some unique styles along the way, and they did get a lot of marketing, infused marketing, and their name really got out there, and they became pretty popular in some aspects of the watches because they were stylish. What ended up killing them was the quality component of this merger. And then when they were bought out by LVMH, again, it further alienated the original fans again from the Heuer days because they became too much about marketing and celebrities and basically it became fashion driven instead of what their roots were, which was a really, really hardcore brand about components, timekeeping, and accuracy. So Tag Heuer goes into the failed version, even though they're still around. They're not bankrupt or anything, but the merger didn't exactly help them in that aspect. Another one that has had a interesting couple chapters, we may say, is Universal Geneve. This, at one point, was one of the most recognized and well-respected watch brands in the world. And unfortunately, they were a victim of the quartz crisis of the late 1970s. And because they were a victim of that, they basically got bought out and thrown into a conglomerate and really forgotten about until recently, which is very interesting because when they got bought out, they were completely stripped of their mechanical identity because the name itself didn't hold any relevance. They ditched the name, took the components, took the movements that they were known for at the time, and the parent company that bought them out used them into other watches and other brands, and then just later forgot about them. And then they were bought out again. Now, when they were bought out again, this time by Breitling. And Breitling has gone under a multi-year renovation to bring back the name, the image, and the models that they used to have with a modern-day flair to help revive the brand under the Breitling umbrella. And that is yet to be seen. So, whereas the first wave, when they got bought out, was a complete disaster because they only wanted the name for the parts, the second wave could be a success story in the future. So stay tuned for this one, because this one has not written its final chapter yet. Another one that unfortunately went by the wayside this is the last example of this, of the failures that I have for you today, is Jean Richard. This is part of the Sowin group alongside Gerard Harrigot, who basically fell apart as a standalone luxury brand following the sudden death of its driving force, Luigi Macaluso, in 2010. They were then bought out by the luxury conglomerate Kering Group that attempted its ambitious relaunch, but unfortunately they had a couple different problems with this one. They misaligned the pricing, and they had a brand saturation issue, which unfortunately for them led to their decline in the mid-2000s by around 2010. So this was basically a brand bought in by the owner, and then bought out by this Kering Group, which unfortunately didn't take them in the right direction. And that's another big problem when you do have mergers. If the company who buys you out has the wrong vision and the wrong alignment strategy, you're basically going to fade into oblivion, because if you misprice your watches and hyperinflate them and the industry doesn't follow you, you probably take Hublot's model of the high-end price point, and if you don't have the fan base and the support to back it up, you're going to go the way of Invicta. And that's pretty much what happened to Jean Richard. Some successful acquisitions, okay? One you wouldn't think of here was, lo and behold, Panerai. Okay, so let's get to some 5 successful acquisitions that kind of saved the day for them. The Richemont Group basically bought Panerai in 1997, and gotta tell you, it took Panerai, which was struggling back in the 90s, and took them and made them one of the most popular brands today. This Italian-Swiss combo type of watch, which has an Italian history and Swiss movements, obviously, they've gone into a global cult phenomenon. And they have a very, very loyal following, and it pretty much saved the day for them. The last 30 years, they've been a very solid producer of Swiss watches, obviously. And this is an example where the Richemont Group, one of the biggest conglomerates in the watch world, came in, brought them in, redesigned them, and saved the day for Panerai, which not a lot of people realize. Another one where things have worked out very well was Breitling itself. We talked about Breitling a little bit earlier, but Breitling was acquired. Finally, they were independent for a long period of time after they bought out, or they merged with Secura back in the day, and they were their own company for a long time until 2021. And basically, they got the problem with Breitling over the years, why they had to get bought out, was because they did have bloated product lines, and they had to be streamlined. And that's exactly what this buyout group basically did, CVC Capital, when they bought them out in 2017. They streamlined their 3 most popular watches, which is the Navitimer, the Chronomat, and the Super Ocean. And then they brought them back into their heritage, basically. So the bullet band, stuff like that, that was huge back in the 80s and 90s for Breitling. They brought it back, and they brought it back as a heritage edition. And this way they can charge more for a heritage edition. I have some of them. I have this watch that you see right here. Gorgeous watch, works great, but it's a throwback, and people love nostalgia, and that's exactly what CVC Capital did for Breitling. They brought them in, and they brought them back. Bulgari is another success story, believe it or not, acquired by LVMH in 2011. And basically, The cool thing about this merger was it gave a lot of investment to their manufacturing facilities, and because of the investment, their Finissimo line and their Octo lines were born, and they were able to break numerous world records for ultra thin watchmaking and their movements. So sometimes a brand just needs more capital. And because of that capital, they lead to innovation, and then innovation leads to production, and the production leads to historical models that everybody still wears today. And that is the case with the Octo version here by Bulgari. We all know them as a fashion brand who is known, but they're also a well-respected Swiss brand known for their movements, style, and technology. And that's what Bulgari has brought because of their acquisition that when they were bought out by LVMH in 2011. Speaking of another brand that needed capital infusion, but this was like a dual helper here. Frederic Constant was bought back in 2016 along with Alpina by Citizen. Now, they both got something out of this deal. Citizen got into the Swiss luxury market, something they've been always wanting to get into. They didn't want the Walmarts and the Macy's of the world. They wanted the bouquiers of the world, and they want to be in the high-end Swiss watch shops, and they had to go purchase a couple of brands, so they purchased both Frederic Constant and Alpina to get into that market, two very small Swiss watch brands. And because of their investment and what they did very uniquely and successfully was they left them alone, very similar to what Carnival did to Princess Cruise Lines when they purchased them. They left them alone and let them do what they do, which is make Swiss watches. But they also gave them capital infusion, and because they gave them capital infusion, now Frederic Constant has grown tremendously and successfully to selling over $100 million worth of watches a year because they're everywhere now. Now they can get into Macy's, they can get into different avenues that they couldn't get to before because they couldn't afford it. But with Citizen's deep pockets, they have a lot of money and a lot of infusion, not just for that, but also for innovation. They now have smart watches in their design, which obviously Citizen was able to give them that technology, and Frederic Constant and Alpina gave them the name recognition that Citizen needed in the industry to fuel their brand and portfolio even further. Corum is one of the last success stories I have for you today. This was an interesting one because not even I was aware of this. But obviously they're known for their golden bridge and their coin watches, along with several other pieces, such as the Admiral's Cup. But basically, this was a company that was bought out, I want to say about 20 years ago, from Hong Kong City Champ Group. And they stayed around, they hovered around for a good couple decades. However, the chairman of Corum, which his name was Hasso Mehmedovic, in the meantime, took all this time that they were a part of this group, and they actually bought them back out from the management group, and now they're their own independent company again. So how do you like that? An independent company was bought out by a conglomerate, and then that CEO of the conglomerate had a secret plan to bring them back into independence, which they currently now are as of 2025, which returned the 70-year-old brand to independence. So that's a unique little twist to how mergers can lead back to independence. And so I give you 5 positive ones and 5 negative ones that have happened over the last several decades. And then there's just one I want to talk about where sometimes it's both good and bad. And this is the one I want to talk about, which is Rolex's acquisition of Bouquier. back in 2023. Now, Rolex did this for a particular reason. Rolex wanted to get into the competition. Bouquier had a lot of watch stores in their grasp, and Rolex wanted to own the watch store so they could put their brand into the watch market further than they were. Because before that, they used to have retailer or say brand asset managers to go into certain jewelry shops where you have the right to sell Rolex. But now Rolex would want a direct access into that market. So they bought Bouquier, like I said, who had a whole bunch of stores, and now they own the stores, and that's what that did for them. So it's positive in that aspect, but the negative aspect is that they really stripped. For a while, they produced Bouquier watches too because they bought the name and the company along with it, which has been around for many years. But they also basically stripped them and are phasing the Bouquier watch name out. And so Bouquier, while it helped Rolex, it also saw the end of its life, basically being phased out and just being used for its name and its locations in the retail market, and its name will eventually go bye-bye and you'll never hear from them again. So again, ladies and gentlemen, those are several different interesting acquisitions in the market that can go one of many different ways. I thank you for joining me today. Sorry this episode went a little long, but it was a lot to get through. And I will be back on with you next month on the next episode of Watch Out. Again, like, subscribe, send me your thoughts, and what episodes you'd like to see in the future. I will be around. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.